Hello everyone, Kurt Hofer here, and welcome back to another episode from Hofer Labs. Today we continue on with the Armored Sword section, and we're going to be looking at the next two plays once again, because they deal with the lower lock and how we can find the arm to be able to grapple the person. Now, this is an interesting play here because for years, before I started going really deep into the concept of effective strikes and what that does to the body and pain aversion kind of studies, these plays right here kind of seemed impossible to do because I could never really pull them off and work against somebody because I wasn't able to get them in certain situations. Well, today we're going to look at how this is actually quite possible, especially if you think about, again, we've talked about the rotation, using someone's volta against them, pain aversion, and other considerations that constrain the action against us, which allow us access into this kind of play. And we're going to look at all of that. We're also going to look at this from a right and left-handed perspective right here because, again, it's interesting, especially in the modern era, being able to fight against people that are both left and right-handed. Remember, historically, people may not have been able to do that because of religious practices, social expectations, etc. But today we get to experience that. So we get to look at another way of how this can be accomplished from a left-handed perspective within the video. But again, as always, please don't forget, like, subscribe, share with a friend out there, and leave a comment below. To my viewers and subscribers, thank you so much for stopping by. As always, I appreciate it, and your support's been wonderful over the years. I want to grow this channel, and it's not possible without viewers like you. That being the case here, we're going to be looking at these next two plays and how the lower lock is achievable in a state of armor.
So this week here, we're going to be looking at two plays specifically that are dealing with concepts we've dealt with all the way back from Operazzari and into dagger, and also all the plays that we've done so far. And we're talking about specifically into the lower key and how we can utilize into that upper lock that we've seen within the first plays of Operazzari to achieve that. So we have the things that we're going to have the images scroll across the screen real fast here as I talk a little bit about how I think these two work. First and foremost, it's not just about hitting the person, it's about other anatomical considerations. And I believe that Fiore is also giving the concept right here about as you are making certain strikes on people, they start to lose agency, and that's where you start to use that loss of strength, control, grip, etc. to take them into a different area. So up until this point, we've looked at a whole bunch of stuff, right? So we've talked about how we can push the arm, stab in spots, how this works, why we stab in spots. But now let's talk about if we actually get a point into the space and what happens off of this crossing when I make that first attack. So the first thing we're going to talk about here is that how the person is doubled over. We're going to talk about going back to the first crossing here, but we're going to make this. I am in close to the crochet. She's extending at me. I'm going to cross off of this, and then on this right here, I'm going to level the point and drive into the shoulder. Now, ideally, if I get this into spot, this is not necessarily going to kill her. This is something that has the potential to rupture the bicep head. It's got a good way of also rupturing the strand to the pectoral into the chest and also the deltoid. So this cluster right here is very open, which attaches to, one, her push ability, being able to withstand and resist, but also her grip ability. So in that colliding into this point right here, it is very possible she might lose her arm as far as like being able to grip. With the sword being low right here, again, the plays of everything else come available to it. Part of what's available right here is my left hand is right here, so I have the ability to access inside and shoot and create that overbind as we see within the image. If my hand was high in this position, I would have to do other things here. I would still have to worry about this sword possibly being in play, and I would want to be able to work in different directions here. Okay, so off of this crossing into the arm, as I jam it through into the arm here, I have the ability, one, the sword covers me, but as she's doing this, to slam down with my hand and turn up and around into that lower position. So I'm trying into that using density charge to get into that upper lock. That gives us access that goes down into the lower key, which we'll be talking about. Brandon will demonstrate that here in a second because heights are a lot easier to work with right here when it comes to that. But I want to make sure, a note real fast here, please understand that we understand that this is not at full speed and that, yes, Brandy is letting me do the thing, okay? But the reality is, in this case here, this is just a way where we look at what this play might be trying to talk about and some of the hidden nastiness that is happening right there, that depending on the person, they are not going to just sit there and say, yep, I'm going to keep pushing forward into a sword thrust into my bicep head. They're probably going to try to give way. Their arm might just go down like this, and now they don't have the access ability. And now this thing, which weighs a lot more, becomes floppy, which creates pockets. So I'm going to demonstrate one more time here, just so we can see that. We'll switch sides here, and then Brandon will be doing the same, and we'll close off from that side. All right, so switch sides. So once again, just so we can see, I'm in very crochet. She thrusts, off, thrust. There's the thrust into the bicep. Slam down the arm, and then shoot up. And I can keep the sword low, because I'm going to follow this and keep the blade contained. Break, throw, whatever. Or I keep this, and I have other spots where I can work in on it. Okay? So, that's just utilizing that upper lock. What we're going to be demonstrating here is this image here, where Brandy's going to put me into the lower key, which is, again, to just show that it's possible to do in a kit of armor. Mind you, we're not wearing full plate. And mind you that there are certain things here that are not as limiting, but the reality is that this is a lot heavier than what historical pieces may have been. So it's a lot easier to probably have done this. Okay? So, I set in position, I extend forward, I thrust, she parries offline, boom, she hits my arm here, arm is low here, and she comes down, and she's going to put me into this lower lock. From this position here, I have the blade right by my throat. She could put up there. She could also think she could ransom. There's all things here that come off of it. Things to consider. These got bound up a little bit in the process. So those are other things too. Again, is this a play that you do, or do you do something else within the manuscript? We don't know. Swap sides here, do it one more time. So again, I'm here. I'm extending. Crosses in. Hits the arm, I'm going back, there's the spot, and from here she can just keep dropping down into the ground, and my arm's in the lower lock. I'm totally fine, this is my breastplate by the 18. Real fast here, this is something also we were talking about as we were kind of rehearsing this. Again, natural lefty right here, so what happens if it's a lefty? Is this plate still available? Absolutely, I'm going to give this to you to take a look at.
Okay. So from the left bear crochet, we'll still approach it the same way as Kurt extends into the thrust. I will meet and thrust in and exchange. Something I want to point out here is you may note that previously we had been working off of disabling the non-dominant arm. In this situation, we've targeted the dominant arm, which means that the sword is still in play. So as we push through and come into the lower key, we just need to make sure that we're covered. And as we turn, we're still in an advantageous position.
What you may have seen there is my arm is dropped. I'm fine and everything, but again, that's the whole point of like how that would, another reality point that may happen. So we'll do that one more time here so you can see this other side. And again, this may just fall right out of my hand in reality. So talk to it again.
Yep. So we're approaching it the same exact way, and you'll see this from the other side. We're coming in from the left bear crochet and disabling the dominant right arm, sweeping into the lower key, and still finding that advantageous position. And we're locked. Boom.
So
One additional note is that even if we are wearing chainmail, as Kurt previously demonstrated with the point test, that point through chainmail on those clusters are going to have a similar effect as if you're just wearing a padded gambeson or no chainmail at all.
So as we continue with this right here, again, this is being able to find the plate, both options, and make it nasty, whether you're right or left-handed. It's still available, and we can still find ourselves in that lower key position.
So you can see with the video, this is quite an interesting piece to look at. And I want to call back to something that Brandy gave a mention of in this video right here, which is, in the point test that I did, chainmail, while absolutely effective against like the kinetic, like striking blows or slashing, is not necessarily the same kind of effect as if you against thrusts. And it is very much so, to like she was saying, capable of being felt through the chainmail sheen itself. That's a big part about this right here that I think is very important for us to remember, because again, depending on what happens, you may be breaking chains, you may not be breaking chains. One thing that may not be happening with this, it may not be going all the way through. That first impact into the arm right here, well, this is definitely going to cause bruising when you talk about striking. It's not going to have the same type of structural damaging that happens if you stick into somebody in the bad spots of their body, which allow them to lose the use of that appendage. So I want to bring that up because that's a very important point here to bring to communicate, is because essentially the use of this type of equipment in this space, a lot of it comes down to overcoming those armor considerations and knowing what does work against what. So striking, again, may not be a beneficial thing here. The thrust is optimal. And as we've talked about in this right here, again, whether it's left or right-handed, thrusting into the portion right here, again, against a right-handed person, striking into the arm right here means that essentially the non-dominant hand, the stabilizing hand, or in this case right here, if I'm extended out right here, the thing that keeps the bottom portion of the sword kind of tracking is debilitated. And that causes ability right here for us to turn the body, which creates the avenue of pocket right here when we shoot across. From the usage of vera croce, as I come in, the left hand, the non-dominant hand, of the person that's performing the technique is right there to drop down, which allows that denti di Chikara wraparound that we've seen within Apprezzare. So once again, we see two plays right here that allow us to come together. And I've talked about the places for Apprezzare, how we come across into the arm, but also now we're using the sword as an entry point of the hand, which allows for us to achieve the deeper grapple. The second portion of this right here, when we talked about the lower lock here it's incredibly possible to do. It's incredibly dangerous to do. And what's one of the reasons why I wanted to do with Brandy, because that way she doesn't have to reach up and come down. We can work at a level where essentially when I go down with this, it's already at a pretty steady plane. And that is a very important piece right there, because it's easy to topple over in armor. And if you don't have good grounding right here, remember we talked about before how your body is kind of like this rather than like this when you're out of armor. So when you're in armor, your body weight is kind of like in this reversed cone, and you could topple and fall and do all sorts of things. So it's very possible to perform this, but it's also very possible in reality to throw the person onto their head, helmet, etc. because of that. It's also very possible to tear and ruin the shoulder because the weight of the body and everything else that goes with this. So the thing about this right here is, again, depending on which arm has been struck, from right to left, she stabbed one side and came across, and she took one arm here and was able to cover with the sword. That's an important piece right here. When it came down to the other side, as a right-handed fighter, I'm going for the non-dominant side here, and again, similar concepts. So both of these right here, these plays are possible. It just comes back to, once again, understanding and remembering our effective strikes, as well as how the body may turn. Now, this is where, again, if we think about last week's about where we push the elbow or whatnot, if I get the person to turn into, and I cause them to open up their arm or deaden that arm or whatever the case may be, I may have an inside approach, and if I don't, I have an outside approach. Again, Fiore's manuscript, to me, is just situational categorization. So before we had straight on, move the visor, hit him in the face. After that, we had push them to my right side, so I have their back. In this case, it's push them to the left side, so I have the lower lock. It's just it's just the possibilities that happen off of Encruzada. And also reminding that at the end of the day, it really is about ransoming or throwing the person to the ground, because that's when the fight in this situation is really done. So with that being the case here, everybody, that's going to do it for this video. Please let me know what your thoughts are. Again, I think this is a really cool play here, and I was really excited to be able to do it both as a right-handed fighter against a lefty, and then also showcase it as a right-to-right, because at the end of the day here, this does, I think, reveal some things that we're not necessarily seeing. And after my exploration about looking at how point tests work and how effective chainmail is or is not, to Brandy's point, chainmail kind of just feels like having a pad of gambeson on when you're stuck in the spots. That's not necessarily a strike, but it's a point thrust at something. So let me know what your thoughts are about that. And as always, everybody, please, until I see you, stay safe out there, train well, and fight on. I'll see you all soon.